Hey, it's Jennifer. In this video, we're going to dive into interpreting part one of the heroine's becoming story, which I wrote for people recovering from complex trauma histories, or for anyone who's just trying to navigate that pervasive survival stress that is basically built into modern culture. I'm a somatic movement therapist and a complex trauma recovered human, and these stories are my own creative work. If you haven't watched the first part of the story yet, it will make much more sense to listen to this after you watch it, so I will link it below. Right now, we're going to go deep with all of the story's symbolism. The story began with meeting our heroine. We all have an inner heroine. To me, she is the guardian of your highest path in life. And I like to describe her as fiercely compassionate and compassionately fierce. She's built for bravery. Maybe you related to her right away, or maybe not. I mean, for me, I know I wouldn't have because I spent so much of my life in a functional freeze in the nervous system and I shut down really quickly. I didn't really think that I had a heroine in me, but either way, your heroine is still there. Part of what we're doing with these stories and other resources I've created is calling her to the surface, helping you tap into the power that is innately yours. We will get there. Back to the story. Like in so many fairy tales, our heroine's parents are missing and presumed dead. Let's talk about that. Maybe you've wondered in fairy tales, what's up with that? Especially if you're a parent, it seems kind of creepy that they always kill off the parents in these stories, right? It's not to scare children or make parents seem irrelevant. In these kinds of stories, which follow the framework of archetypal storytelling, everything is symbolic. Each piece represents an aspect of a single person's psyche. So, in the heroine's becoming, the missing king and queen, the heroine's parents, symbolize the divine masculine and feminine in leadership roles. Missing parents can also represent that the person is still developing into their full individual self. The internal structure, the nurturing, protective leadership templates that when they're missing, force the psyche to compensate. We know, especially if you had early childhood complex trauma, when we don't receive good enough parenting, we don't really know how to do it for ourselves. We don't know what we've never fully experienced, what we've seen modeled for us. Therefore, it's as though we don't have an internal sense of royal sovereignty over our own kingdom. There can be a feeling of being powerless in one way or another. We compensate for that in different ways, right? Some of us grasp for others to stabilize us. Others of us compensate with being hyper independent. But either way, that feeling of internal support and being comfortable with receiving outside support might be missing. So when we talk about reparenting ourselves, that's really what we're doing, rebuilding the healthy, supportive internal structure that is balanced with the feminine nurturing and the masculine protection. We are working on building that royal sovereignty over our own kingdom. Just never too late to do. So that is what the parents stand for. Next in the story, we met our heroine's sister, the crown princess. She has that interesting condition of being frozen in time where she doesn't grow up. She represents the inner child, the keeper of eternal innocence. That idea of the inner child has gotten a lot of traction in recent years, but it might still sound a little weird to some of you. I know there was a time it sounded weird to me, but it really is an important piece, especially for those with complex trauma. We all of us carry childlike aspects in our psyches, whether or not we are aware of them. It's better to become aware of it because if not, they can end up running the show, and that is really generally not a good look for adults. Whereas if we have a healthy, integrated inner child, it looks like appropriate expressions of wonder, creativity, playfulness, and wildness. A lot of us have lost touch with those things, and therefore we can relate to what happens next in our story. So the kingdom, and representing the entire person, is under attack and looking hopeless. You're watching a channel called Moving Through Trauma. I'm going to guess you've been here too. Many of us have, maybe from our earliest days, been in bad situations where we couldn't escape. And that is the reality of childhood trauma. Sometimes it's the reality for adults too. We can't always just leave a bad situation. Our systems find ways to cope as best they can. In the story, that's where our warrior and advisor come in. They represent the nervous system along with the brain that mobilizes or immobilizes us when we're under threat. It's always prioritizing survival, right? Whatever it takes. This is where the crown princess, in all her delightful joy, wonder, creativity, and her wildness, she gets hidden in the village. It's not safe for her to be at home in the castle, which is the heart of the kingdom. It's not safe for her to just be herself. Feel free to share and connect in the comments if you've experienced something like that in your life. I think we all have in some way, right? Just by being in society, we learn to hide what we're told is too much, too dangerous, attracts too much attention. And often we end up erasing our brilliance to fit into the village and stay safe. We have our heroine, on the other hand. She is the firecracker, the one who would want to work with that warrior's response to push back and fight. That is really standing for our sympathetic branch of the nervous system that mobilizes us to take action. When we think of the nervous system responses of fawn, flight, fight, and freeze, society seems to hold up fight as a superior nervous system response. We like the idea, right, of being able to show up in that fierce energy. No wonder, if only power dynamics could always be in the favor of what is good, and we could just use our energy to put a stop to bad things. This is a human story, not a superhero story, and there are no morally superior nervous system responses. It is biology. It's how your system is wired, partly from the body you were born with, and partly from your lived experiences. It's all based on what your system perceives to be best for survival at the moment, and being parasympathetic dominant, where your nervous system leans toward down regulation, slowing, freezing under threat. It's actually more common in women than men, and it's also linked to the structure of our connective tissues. It's also likely ancestral. It's what worked to keep your lineage alive, what worked to keep women safe in cultures where they were viewed as property or prey. All these things can be at play in the way we respond when we receive or perceive a potential threat. Not to mention being hypervigilant and scanning for threats. Just know that however your body tends to respond, whether it be the people pleasing, leaving your body, or raising hell, it's all based on biological wisdom and the priority of keeping you alive. We can be thankful for that and also know that if that wiring based on the past is not working for you in the present, you can begin to wire your system and create new ways of responding. This brings us to another element of the story, the immobilizing potion of fear our heroine is given. When our systems are overwhelmed by fear, responding to a perceived danger, and we know we can't win by appeasing or running away or fighting back, our biology is going to immobilize us in what is known as a freeze response. In that state, we might feel numb, collapsed, foggy, separate from our body. It's like when my cat gets a hold of a lizard and the lizard plays dead, so the cat will stop batting it. Oh, poor lizard. We do the same. It doesn't matter how brave and determined your character is. When that survival response takes over, the rest goes offline. We will collapse and go numb until the threat passes. And the thing is, sometimes it never passes, right? Abusive or toxic relationships, high control cultures, living in an unsafe place, constant low grade dread from oppression, not being able to make ends meet, something else. It's all like the immobilizing potion of fear and literally stress chemicals that never stop circulating and shifting our biology. When we don't get the safe space and also human support in between life's difficulties, our systems don't get a chance to recover. So we end up staying armored. We don't discharge all the trapped fight energy, which we all have on some level. That is exhausting. So this is when, like our heroine, we can end up living in a state of functional freeze, which makes everything really difficult. This can look like being stuck in our heads while the body still has varying layers of numbness. And we're trying to navigate life just from up here, right? Without the wisdom of the body, without that full communication system, that full compass. It's like we just have one working part of the compass that's not meant to do it on its own. If this freeze state sounds a lot like depression to you, you would be correct. It's the feeling of wake me when it's over. And it can follow us even after the original thing is over. Know that when your survival physiology is running the show, it doesn't mean you aren't brave or capable. And you can't fix it by being high vibe or having more faith or trying harder. It just means your biology has been wired by overwhelming life experiences. And even on a cellular level, you can still be responding like you're in danger, even after the threat has passed. And all of this diverts our energy and cellular resources, so our bodies aren't working or healing or repairing as well as they would in safety. However, we can recover from it. In our story, it's only when our heroine feels a sense of safety again that she's able to thaw out the freeze response and begin to mobilize herself. This is why learning to give ourselves a felt sense of safety and presence in our bodies, no matter what's going on around us, is really key for those recovering from traumatic histories. That brings us to our next part of the story. Our heroine begins having dreams, pointing her toward what she has forgotten. Her sister, the crown princess, representing the inner child. This is a bit more of an esoteric part as we go from trauma biology to something a little more abstract, but it happens to many of us in some way. Maybe when life calms down a bit, we feel safe enough, we start to remember what we lost along the way. Maybe realizing how much we've suppressed our emotions or betrayed our authenticity to be accepted by our family or our culture, or it's dreams or callings we gave up and we get that nagging urge to reclaim them. Could also be a health or relationship crisis that maybe shows us where we've been neglecting our needs or functioning in trauma patterns and loops. Either way, life seems to have ways of putting us back on the path to wholeness, and that is a very good thing. So for some, it might be a nice direct path, maybe, but for others, we get the wild ride that comes next in our story. Okay, so we have the snake, which is probably my favorite part of the story. I love snakes. I'll show you my phone case if you can see it. See how much I love snakes. I'm not lying. I really do. So the heron snake isn't venomous, but it is extremely powerful. And what it represents is the awakening of consciousness and suppressed life force energy. I will explain both. The consciousness part, again, this might all sound strange and a little woo-woo to some of you, and I like woo-woo personally, but there really seems to be something within us that naturally arises around midlife, if not sooner, a force that exists in service to our mission. And by nature, it will, in one way or another, blow open new levels of consciousness. What we're aware of, our ability to see the big picture that expands as we get older. Part of the process is having everything that's getting in the way of what you are here to do cleared. And that very much includes our trauma wiring and the related patterns that we are still repeating. Sometimes that clearing force takes us off the path we thought was it, and it forces us to carve a brand new one. Western culture knows this phenomenon exists. They just call it a midlife crisis, right? Behave badly. Pretend it never happened. Others describe it from a spiritual perspective, the kundalini awakening, where dormant or suppressed life force energy is depicted by that serpent coiled at the base of the spine that then powerfully comes online, traveling up through the midline, through the spine, resulting in a huge wave of energy opening and clearing the system. So we can also look at it from a biological perspective, and we will, but everyone doesn't experience a wave of awakening at the same level. Some just have a steadier, more consistent life path, and they are not going to relate to this part very much. But then those people probably are not watching this video, and others kind of chase the awakening as an experience, and they may force it with substances or practices. But then there's some of us, we're just trying to live life. encounter this giant disruptor to our chosen path. Something, and it could be love, heartbreak, sudden changes or loss of relationships, jobs, family, social structures. Maybe you're thinking of some other experience that you've had. Let me know. So these experiences have in common that they bring up enough emotion to wake up every part of our systems that were put to sleep by fear, abuse, oppression. And as that life force energy comes up through our systems, all we buried and suppressed throughout our lives tends to rise up into our conscious awareness. And we end up getting the wild ride that our heroine did, maybe feeling shaken and constricted and turned upside down and forced to wrestle with it until we're ready to integrate the truth of our story and our own power. We can also go a little layer deeper with this. Snakes shed their skin. They're traditionally associated with transformation, renewal, and healing. And as we humans metaphorically shed our old skin, we reveal layers of wisdom we've grown into. And we see that with our heroine. She's been through so much abuse, and she's on this healing journey. She's coming out of the immobilized state, stepping out of this tiny existence she's been trapped in the cottage. Slowly, her physical strength, intuition, and life force energy is coming back online. If we've spent a lot of our lives with our nervous system stuck in a functional freeze, suppressing emotions and voice and contracting and armoring, being able to hold all the energy that our systems are actually capable of producing, it can be a lot. It can be too much at once because we haven't developed that internal circuitry for it all to run through. Whereas maybe if you think of little kids, healthy little kids who have not had their nervous system injured by birth or early developmental trauma, they are full of life force energy, right? Like they are still developing their circuitry and their little bodies can hardly contain it, right? They're always moving, exploring, making noise. And often children's perception and awareness is also very strong. Creativity and imagination are off the rails until life teaches them to shut so much of that down. And the circuitry in the body and neural pathways reflect that. Yet, no matter how that went for us as little ones, shutting down is not the end of the story. There is still that force deep within us, our gorgeous, larger than life snake energy that seems to naturally show up when we have reached a certain level of capacity to handle what it brings. Like the snake tells the heroine, "Oh, no, I didn't find you. You found me." There is that internal wisdom, right, to how these things unfold. Through our story, we see how the heroine is being prepared for her next level of recovery and transformation. When we've been through so much trauma, we do need to be gentle and methodical with our recovery, not rushing, not trying to fix ourselves, letting the story unfold, going at your own pace, cultivating safety, thawing out the freeze, building internal connection, learning to mobilize our energy, but also learning to slow it down if it moves too fast. And slowly but surely, we build this coherent internal support and structure that we need to move through life and be able to then expand into new experiences and to make healthy relational connections. If you need more support, know that all the resources I create have that very titrated, sequential, trauma-educated structure. On my website, you will find the Emotional Alchemy ebook, also Heroine's Compass programs, which are there to help you cultivate that safety presence, coherence, and flow in your system. And Emotional Alchemy is always free. It's a great resource for you. You can make a lot of progress just by working with that. With that wild ride, we are at the end of part 1 of the Heroine's Becoming, and we are just getting started. I can't wait to share part 2 with you. I will see you in the next video.